Dimitra's Dishes. So today I'm going to teach you how to make a recipe that's from Crete, where I come from, Kalitsounia Spanaki, which translates to little mini fried pies that are going to be made with a homemade dough that are filled with spinach. They're delicious and they're so easy to make. Let's go over the ingredients so we can get started. So for the filling, we need lots of fresh spinach, fresh parsley, fresh mint, scallions, also known as green onions. If you have fresh dill, you can use fresh or dried. Feta cheese is totally optional. Salt, pepper, lemon juice is also optional. Olive oil, and then we're going to need the dough. So I have some homemade dough over here. Let me tell you how I made it. In my tabletop mixer, I combined some all-purpose flour, a little pinch of salt, some water, freshly squeezed lemon juice, and olive oil. And then with the dough hook attachment, I allowed it to knead for 5 minutes or until it was nice and smooth. If it's still a little bit sticky, you can go ahead and add about a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour and then knead it a little bit longer just until it's smooth. Transfer it into a bowl that's been greased with a little bit of olive oil. Cover it with a clean kitchen towel or with some plastic wrap and let it rest at room temperature for about an hour or so. You don't want to keep your dough uncovered. Always keep plastic over it or a towel so that way it doesn't form a skin on top. We're going to begin by making our filling. So for our filling, I have lots of green onions, also known as scallions. We're just going to finely chop them, and these are going to add lots and lots of flavor and freshness. This is such a fresh filling. My scallions are chopped. I'm going to add about 3 to 4 tablespoons or even a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Now I'm making half a batch today because if I were to make the whole batch, I'm not having a party or anything and I'll end up eating all of these because they're so good. So I'm going to add my scallions and I'm going to cook them for about 4 to 5 minutes just until they're soft over medium-high heat. Now we're going to add the spinach in a few batches. And we're just going to cook it until it wilts. Now, while some of the spinach is wilting, I'm just going to chop up this parsley and the mint. So we're just looking for to chop up the leaves, not the stems. So now we're just going to finely chop our mint. Put it all together. We're going to add the rest of the spinach to the pan. See how quickly it cooks down? So to that, we are adding our parsley and our mint, a heaping tablespoon of fresh dill. Again, keep in mind that I'm making a smaller batch, half the batch actually. A little bit of salt, and lots of freshly ground black pepper. Greens and freshly ground black pepper just go so well together. And we're just going to cook this for a few more minutes until everything wilts. So after a couple of minutes, about 4 to 5 minutes, all the spinach and herbs will have wilted and cooked, and the water would have also dried up. Now this filling is still going to be just a tiny bit juicy. Don't worry about making it super dry, that's fine. I'm going to turn off the heat, give it a taste, and see if it needs a little bit more salt and pepper. So much freshness. For my taste, it does need a little bit more salt, and I'm going to go ahead and add it. I'm going to be careful not to add too much because traditionally these are served as is. They're vegan. There's no cheese in them. If anything, you could put a little squeeze of lemon and that's just going to really brighten it up even more. But in my family, we all love feta cheese, so I am going to go ahead and crumble in some delicious feta to make it creamy and cheesy, of course, because spinach and feta, who doesn't love that? But if you want to keep it vegan at this point, just leave it as is, or you can squeeze about a tablespoon or 2 of lemon juice in here, freshly squeezed lemon juice, and then set it aside and let it cool completely, and this filling will be ready to fill in the little pies. But, like I said, I have a nice chunk of feta here, and I'm going to go ahead and crumble it in here. Always buy chunk feta. Do not get the already crumbled kind. It's not good quality. We've spoken about it a million times. It takes 2 seconds to crumble it, and it's totally worth it. That's it. I'm just going to mix this up and set it aside to cool down a little bit. Okay, so our filling is cooling. Now I'm going to take half of the dough that I prepared. Take the dough and cut it into 2 equal pieces. I'm going to save the other half for later because, like I said, I'm only making half a batch of this. So I'm just going to set this aside and make some more tomorrow. You can store this in your refrigerator, and then right before you're ready to use it, take it out and let it come to room temperature. And now this piece of dough right here, I'm going to put some all-purpose flour on my counter so that way it's not sticky. I'm going to cut this into 4 equal portions. As equal as I can get it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so I cut it into 4 equal pieces because I'm going to be using my pasta roller. If you have a KitchenAid mixer and you have this attachment, this is the perfect time to take it out and use it because it's going to make rolling this dough out very, very simple because you have to get it rolled out very, very thin, about 1/8 of an inch or even thinner. So if you don't have one, you don't have to cut this into 4 pieces because you can just roll all the dough out, or you could do it in 2 batches and roll half out. And roll it to 1/8 of an inch in thickness. Just flour it lightly so that way it's not sticky anymore. Make sure start the machine at the thickest part, which is number 1, and pass it through. Lightly flour as you go because you really do not want it to get stuck into the machine. So you're going to pass it through 2 times at the number 1 setting, and then we're going to tighten it a little bit so it can roll it out thinner. So there we go. We'll move it to number 2, and then I'm going to move it to number 3 just so it could be a little bit thinner than this. And it's a very elastic dough. As long as the dough is well rested, it shouldn't tear on you or anything like that. It should roll out very easily. Pass it through one last time. If it's hard to handle, go ahead and cut it in half and just do this in 2 parts. There we go. You have a beautiful long strip of dough. I'm going to show you 2 ways actually to do this. So you can use a cookie cutter or biscuit cutter that's 3 to 4 inches in diameter. I like the 4-inch ones better than the 3-inch ones. And you go ahead and cut out round, setting them aside as you go. So that's one way to do it. You could set these aside, take this excess dough and set it aside, and then we're going to keep rolling these out, and I'll show you the second way to do it. So if you're going to use the cutouts, the cutout method, you're going to take one of them, one of the circles, and you're going to take a spoonful of the spinach filling, leaving a little bit of a border around so that way you can seal properly. And then take a little bit of water and brush all around with the water so the top one can stick. Place the other dough on top, and then with your fork go all around and just press it down to seal it. If you're using a bigger cutout like a 5-inch or a 6-inch, then you would just need 1 piece of dough, and you just put it in the center and you fold it over like a half moon shape. So we're just going to place a tablespoon of filling, or maybe a little bit less, on the top portion, and then brush with water all around. Fold the second portion over the top of the filling, the bottom portion of the dough. Then press down with your fingers to release all of the air. And then either using a cookie cutter or this roller, you're just going to cut these little half moons. Let me show you how you would do it with the cookie cutter. You just put it on top like that to release them. Then you're going to lift them and place them on your baking tray that's lined with a towel or parchment paper and dusted with flour. And then we're going to keep going until we run out of filling and dough. If your spinach filling releases a little bit too much water, you go ahead and drain some of it out. You want it to be juicy, but not so wet where it wets your dough and makes it fall apart. That does happen. Don't ask me how I know. You want to put about 4 or 5 in, depending on how big your frying pan is, in really hot oil, and let them cook until they're golden on all sides. It takes total like 2 to 3 minutes on each side, but just keep an eye on them. So I just took out the last one. Let me move this frying pan to the back. Even though this is a half batch, we've made a lot of Kalitsounia, a lot of little pies. You're going to want to let them cool a little bit just 5 minutes or so that way everything settles and you don't get burned because this gets super duper hot. Let me open this up and show you what it looks like on the inside. The filling is just so juicy. Look at that. Combination just can't get any more perfect. The spinach is it's just so juicy and soft and melted. The scallions add the perfect amount of sweetness. Of course, the feta cheese makes everything better. And then the dill and the mint are all in the background. Everything tastes fresh and delicious. You can add your favorite greens in here. So you can substitute some of the spinach out and put in some peppery arugula. You can do Swiss chard. You can do whatever you want. Just mix it all up and just make your creations however you like them, or if you're growing greens, use whichever ones you have laying around. Now, a few tips. So if you ever get to go to Crete, these are usually in almost everyone's freezers. These are in all of my aunt's freezers, ready to go. A cheesy version and a spinach version, and they just fry up in no time. So if you're making the complete batch and you're not serving them to a big group of guests, you can freeze them before you fry them. You cannot freeze them once you fry them. So once you assemble them, wrap them up in plastic wrap, store them in your freezer, and then you can just fry them frozen as is until they're nice and golden. Just be sure that when the spinach filling is made, that if it releases too much liquid, try to strain some of that out, because the dough is a thin, delicate dough, and if it has too much liquid in this filling, it's going to start to get sticky and hard to handle, so just keep that in mind. Those are really the only tips you need to follow. I hope you go over to the website www.dimitrasdishes.com, make this, share pictures with me on social media. The recipe is also in the description box down below. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I will see you all next time. Gracias.